The Kent School District Board meetings are held in public on the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month at 7 p.m. at the Administration Center in accordance to the Washington State Open Public Meetings Act. Regular meetings include presentations and reports dealing with district operations, as well as time set aside for public comment. Now, here are your Kent School District Board of Directors. Welcome to tonight's board meeting.
I'd like to call our meeting to order. I've asked Dean Ficken to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, so would you please stand?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, welcome to our meeting. It's nice to see a lot of different faces out there. This is a meeting of the board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. We allow opportunity for public comments later in the agenda. If you would like to address the board, fill out a white card with a blue border that's on the back table back there. Bring it up to the dais at any point in time. And if you wish to speak to an agenda item, please indicate that on your card, and we will take some time at that portion of the agenda to allow you to speak. You will have 3 minutes. Dr. Watts, are there any changes to the agenda?
President Brewer, members of the board, Ms. Everett, please note that there's a supplemental personnel report that was added to the consent agenda, and a printed copy is before you on the dais.
All right, thank you. We need a motion to add the supplemental personnel report to the consent agenda.
I so move.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, we're on to the 2.0, the recognition. And we will have pictures taken after we do all the recognition. So first we have the Washington State Achievement Award, and Dr. Mac Mitchell and the SIOs are here to introduce the award recipients. So come on down. Uh-oh.
My SIOs have all the data on this, so I'm going to
Your SIOs.
So I will introduce them, and we'll move this right along. First, we have Allison Deno, SIO, and she does the elementaries along with Dr. Millicent Borached.
Good evening, President DeBruler, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Everett. I'm here because I'm really excited to present Carriage Crest with their Washington Achievement Award, and we have Principal Gallagher and Ms. Danielle DeJong, who's their data coach and educational assistant tonight. So if you can come up and join me. This is Carriage Crest's 5th year in a row earning the Washington Achievement Award, and their 4th year in a row in the English language arts area. So this is really exciting for Carriage Crest and for all of their work. So thank you, Robert and Danielle.
Good evening. I am going to share. We have Martin Sertoon, we have Horizon, and we also have Grass Lake, and they're probably on their way. But I just wanted to recognize them for doing great work. Thank you.
And next we have our Schools of Distinction Awards.
So the Schools of Distinction, that would be Millicent also introducing.
Hi there. Once again, we have Martin Sertoon. We have, I don't see, we have Grass Lake, and we have Martin Sertoon, Grass Lake, and Horizon. Yes. And they're not here.
And no representatives?
They have no representative here.
Well, should we clap for them?
Congratulations to them anyway. All right, so at this point in time, let's do our photos for our Washington State Achievement Award, Carriage Crest. You want to come on over here and we'll take pictures?
A piece of paper.
Carrying on the tradition.
Yes, absolutely.
Well done, Carrie. That's a good thing. Moving on to our Safety Services Quarterly Report. Tim Kovich and Jared Kasner are here. Just Tim? Your one-man show tonight, Tim? We're available to answer questions, and if you have something you want to
Good
say
evening.
first.
Yes, unfortunately, Commander Kasner could not be with us this evening, so.
All right. Do we have a question? I have a question. Does anybody else have a question?
I just had one.
Okay.
So on Washington School Safety Officers with the monthly meeting and the guest speaker for restorative justice practices, can you tell me a little?
That was my question.
Was that yours? I'm sorry.
So the Washington School Safety Officers Group meets monthly, and our SRO, Karen Davey from Covington, is in charge of that organizational group. And she brought in the trainer that was also the trainer that works with Randy Heath, and he's bringing in some of the same information. So it was neat to see that presenter come in and do some of that. We're trying to spread that out to our safety officers to then bring that back to the schools and be part of that team that we hope as we move forward into next year and other times we're going to be continuing that.
Great, thank you.
So is this an ongoing thing? That they'll be meeting, because it takes more than one time to get trained on this?
Correct. So this was just a very short meeting to get some information. We're going to be presenting this during our training academy in the summer that we do for 10 days with our officers. So this will be a full 8 hours, I believe, coming this summer with our officers. So
Good. Okay. Any other questions? Comments?
just one other noteworthy thing that happened. Actually, it happened today. I know it's not part of this report at this time, but Karen Davey also went today to Spokane to receive an award for her Explorers group that are student-based police explorers. And so they went over to Spokane and received that today. So hopefully we'll have some more information in a future report. So that was neat to see. So.
Oh, good. How many students went?
I believe it's close to 20 in the group that she has.
All right. Good. That's interesting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
And here he comes, Randy. We've got our school discipline data quarterly report. Randy Heath.
Good evening, President DeBruler, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Everett. So I'm happy to bring the discipline report to you at this time of the year when behaviors tend to ramp up a little bit. I'm pleased to report that we continue to see really positive trends in the right direction with our discipline data. So just, as an example, our overall suspension rates in our in-school suspensions are down 425 from where they were 2 years ago. The short-term suspensions are down 544 from where they were 2 years ago, and our long-term suspensions are a third of what they were 2 years ago. So these are the trends that we like to see and we hope to continue to see. One of the other things that we found, really, I kind of broke out the ones where we did the short-term suspensions because that's the bulk of our suspensions out of school. And I looked at it a little different way. I said, okay, what if we took the number of schools in that category, and so what is the average that's happening there? just to put a little in context, back when I first became an assistant principal years ago, it was in a different district. I was in middle school. We were regularly suspending close to 1,000 students a year, and that was not totally uncommon in different areas of the Puget Sound region and around the country. And that was back before we really started to understand this. So basically at our high schools this year, in terms of short-term suspensions, we're averaging 75 per school, which it still seems like a lot, but if you consider the large number of school kids that attend those schools, it's really not, and much better than it has been in the past. 51 at the middle schools per school and 9 per elementary school. So we're headed in the right direction, and then we're continuing to do things right now. Part of it is the discipline policy first reading that you see tonight. The procedures will be coming with it at the next board meeting when we look to pass the policies. And we've done some work that we think will impact even more our suspension rate. And then, of course, our work with trying to bring in multi-tiered systems of support for behavior that I think will also have an impact. So I'm feeling real positive about where we're headed right now. We're by no means where we need to be yet, but we are headed in the right direction.
Comments or questions?
Not yet.
Sorry, I had one. So mine, I do appreciate that the numbers are going and the policy. Always concerned about the level of support and how we're doing on supporting those students when they're not in school.
Right.
So making sure that we have everything in place and in line, that those students are still being supported through their academics that they need. So.
Right. And we've been forced to be a little creative. Our original plan, especially for our long-term suspension students, didn't work out for us for a variety of different reasons right now. So we've really started to explore. Many of these students qualify for LAP funding, which all buildings have. We've been looking at doing some tutoring with kids that are currently out on long-term suspension, utilizing some of our LAP funds as a way to provide them and keep them academically involved while they're out on suspension. And of course, even long-term suspensions require the readmission or the re-engagement plans, which always give students the opportunity to meet certain conditions to get back to school sooner than what the long-term suspension length is. So,
Thank you.
Other?
Somebody else? I'll go last.
Okay. Maya, did you want to say something? What I noticed, Randy, is that on the multiple offenses by race, going from 2015 to 2016, 2017, all those outliers that had this incredible amount of offenses have been cut down. All those big ones out on the end have been cut down, and there's still too many,
Right.
At the maximum, but it's looking a lot better. I'm not sure what's happening, but I'm hoping it's something good.
Yeah, and I'm glad you noticed that, because when I was looking for a few things to highlight, I actually was thinking of doing that. So I'm glad you highlighted it. Yes, we're pleased to see that. Part of it is around some of the behavior supports that we have a behavior specialist that is able to go out to buildings now for not only special education students, but also regular education students, try to figure out what the function of the behavior is, and then do some real targeted supports toward that. And that is, I think, supporting some of those kids from doing those repeats. So.
Yeah, well, it looks like it's working. I mean, that much. That's good. That's good news.
Yeah.
So it's more of a comment. So with an equity lens, I'd really like to maybe see the line of what would be equitable. So maybe in our next graph, if I can see a target, because it's still inequitable, I mean, I can see that plain as day. So at some point, I need a number or a line, or what's our goal, or when will we know we're more equitable, I guess is what I'm saying. So if there's a line that we could do across the bars, that this is a goal, that there's no longer inequity in our discipline, I'd really like that. Am I making any sense here?
Yes, and I think some of that will come with the end of the year report that we do, and when we really look at the disproportionality numbers, when we have the complete picture for the year. And then the other piece is that with the regular updates to the strategic plan, the blueprint, there are some goals and targets that we are shooting for in terms of our out-of-school suspensions that we'll be able to see whether we are making them or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I'm just drawing my own meaning from all the. This is tons of data, right?
Right.
So I'm hoping maybe at the next quarter that you can provide me your interpretation of the data and reflecting back. Look, what you said very early on was perfect, because that's exactly what was missing for me in this, is what you said. And the executive summary of past, present, and then the future. So I just want a better grip on, because I don't know what my interpretation is even close than what we should be. But as it ties into our blueprint, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Or less.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I think anytime data is presented, if it's presented with the backdrop of the blueprint, to see where we're headed, are we getting close to are we making any gains? And I know we haven't done that on a quarterly basis, but I think we're supposed to do that biannually, so maybe we can make it work.
And we do have, and that's a great point. We do have those preliminary data sets. I actually had an opportunity to present today to another group. The reality is disproportionality that Randy mentioned, and it's simple, not always easy, but if a student group represents 30% of the student population, then we should see no more than 30% of discipline, and those are easy ways we can identify. So great point.
Yep.
Thank you, Randy. Any other questions?
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Randy.
Okay.
Okay, we're on to our presentations. We have our 2016-17 Mentoring Programs Executive Report. So Dr. Mac Mitchell and Dr. Pam Unsing are here to present our information.
So President DeBruler, members of the board, Dr. Watts, and Ms. Everett. Leadership doesn't just happen in a district. You have to nurture it, and that nurturing we call mentoring in KSD here. We have two powerful mentoring programs, one for teachers and one for principals. And those programs are led by our Department of Professional Development and by Dr. Pam Ansing, who heads that. Before she takes over, I just want to add that we've noted that you've been asking questions about the blueprint, as you just did, and also about budget, which you did last time we met. So these presentations from now on will include mention of how our programs calibrate in the budget and the blueprint from now on. Thanks. Now here's Pam.
Down just a little. President DeBruler, Dr. Watts, members of the board, Ms. Everett. It's an honor to be here tonight with you to present our annual KSD Mentoring Programs report. I would like to begin by introducing some of our principal mentors and teacher mentors to you that are here with us this evening. So when I call your name, will you please stand if you're here? First of all, our principal mentors, Patty Drobny from Daniel Elementary. Stay standing, okay. And Beth Wallen, Panther Lake.
There she is.
Kathy Lendowski, Lake Youngs Elementary. Dean Ficken, Emerald Park. And Mike Albrecht, Kent Ridge High School. These are our principal mentors.
Hey.
And next I'd like to introduce to you our teacher mentor specialists, and they are Stacy Greenwich, Melanie Reedy, Lisa Doyle, Laura Maroos, and Dr. Chell Strumer-Rowe. And Hillary Anderson, thank you so much. All right. Let us begin.
There's chairs up in front if you want to come and sit. Are you okay? Yeah. Going to make a quick escape? Okay.
The work that we do in our principal mentoring programs, both at the teacher and principal levels, are tightly aligned to our district blueprint, specifically goals 1, 3, and 4. Contextually, the Kent School District fits right into the characteristics of a typical BEST grant-funded district, as shown on this slide. These numbers are from our March 22nd BEST convening in Tacoma this year. And as you know, Kent has a free and reduced rate of just under 50% and approximately 64% students of color. So we fit right into a typical BEST district. The University of Washington and OSPI this year partnered to study these components, the 7 that you see on the slide, to determine their effect on teacher retention. And it was found that if these 7 components are in place in a teacher mentor program, then we should gain the following result. That being that only 6% of BEST grant first-year teachers are predicted to exit their home district, compared to 10% of first-year teachers who are not part of BEST programs. So having a quality teacher mentor program is a benefit to the district in many ways, but in terms of teacher retention, which directly aligns to one of our goals. Our BEST program is based on research and guidelines found from the Center for Strengthening the Teacher Profession. We follow those guidelines in shaping and developing our program. It is also based upon the research of Lipton and Wellman, and these different components that you see listed here are also the work that we shape our program around. The book that we use in our mentoring program is Mentoring Matters, a practical guide to learning-focused relationships. So this is our foundation. The Kent School District has, this last year, an 87% retention rate. So those number of first-year teachers that stayed with the district into second year that we are still in the mentoring program is 87%. We recently conducted a teacher mentor survey, as we do annually every year. And here is a snapshot of some of the quantitative data from this spring. And that indicates that our mentees feel very positive about the amount of support that they're receiving and the time that they are spending with their mentors. We were able this year to provide full release mentors for all of our first-year new teachers, while second-year mentees were supported by in-building mentors. However, if there were mentees that needed additional support, we were able to flex and give them the services that they needed. Our caseloads are determined by mentor expertise, the number of new teachers, and specialty areas that make up the team. Here's just a couple of quotes from our survey data that you can read. But my favorite quote was, "I am becoming the teacher I want to be. I can look back on all of this work this year and see my own growth."
Great.
This diagram is a good reminder for all of us about that first-year teacher's experience with their attitudes towards teaching. It illustrates so well for us the importance of having a quality teacher-mentor program like ours that provides high support and encouragement in that first year of teaching. So you can see they start off strong. They're very high in anticipation, which quickly turns to survival. And by October, November, December, January, we are in disillusionment. Why did I do this? And our mentor program kicks in, and our folks come around, our new teachers, and rejuvenation begins, reflection begins, and we move into anticipation finally, and we're ready for the next year. This year, We added another feature to our professional development work with our mentees, and we aligned these different phases to the dimensions of our CEL 5D framework. This provides opportunities for our mentors to have ongoing learning-focused conversations that connect directly to the CEL 5D framework, which supports equitable practices throughout the year. We look at mentoring as a way to build professional capacity because our program has supported this work in a variety of ways. You know about our one-to-one mentoring and our in-building mentor program. We also have the Pro-Teach support cohort. We also, as you're familiar, we have the National Board Certified Teacher Support cohort that we have been able to do this year and in the past. We have our new teacher orientation days in August, as well as an instructional best practices series that we run throughout the year. And it focuses on the instructional core, that is the interaction between the teacher and the student in the presence of content. That is our instructional core. Our first year is spent largely on reflection and strategies and classroom management. And then our second year, we're able to go much deeper into specific classroom strategies to try, to model, to provide feedback, observe others, and keep that continuous feedback cycle going. Moving into our principal mentoring program, it is also based on research. In fact, here we are looking at a meta-analysis by Marzano and team, and they found a 0.25 correlation exists between the leadership of a building and district and the average academic achievement of students in the schools. So leadership does matter. So once we train up our teachers and once we train up our principals, we want to keep them because over time they're going to be a benefit to our district in multiple ways, especially in student achievement. So our participation in the new Principal Mentor Program this year was 100%, so all new principals participated. Our leadership development work has included this year our leadership team cohort model. In the fall, we broke into job-alike groups and we studied high-impact challenge areas, which kind of evolved into our expert teamwork, which you've been hearing about this year. In this spring, we moved into PLC cross-sharing of best practices. So again, in job-alike with elementary and secondary. We brought in Dr. Anthony Muhammad, you may remember in December, international speaker, PLC advocate, and author of the book study that we did on overcoming the achievement gap trap. So our principals devote between 9 and 10 hours each month mentoring new principals one-to-one and in small group settings. They're trained. All of our principal mentors have gone through the NAESP training, which means that they have to go through certification procedures and learn standards and clock hours of mentoring just so they can be a certified mentor. Here are some of the principal mentor survey results. Showed strong responses in most all of our areas. We will be addressing how we can support increased professional growth opportunities and risk-taking, which was mentioned in our survey, with our mentees going forward. In terms of investment, here are the dollars at work. So we calculated all of our 5.4 FTE mentor specialist salaries for the 7-month period, which you see here, September through March. And all of these FTE are funded by federal and state grants, so Title IIA and the BEST grant, to be specific. It includes all their longevity stipend, their tri-pay, their base salary. All the grant covers that. And so the Principal Mentor Program actually shows their whole annual stipend, which is spread among 5 mentors. So that's actually the entire year mentored. And that was funded out of PD General account. Our next step is that we are going to pull together and review all of the data from our surveys that we do with our principal mentors, mentees, and teacher mentees, and be making necessary adjustments to our programming in consideration of any changes in budgets and that kind of thing to make sure that we're offering as strong a program as we can, continuing with our principal and our teacher mentors. So at this time, I would like you to hear from some voices from the field. and hear how the work is affecting and impacting our people. So I'd like to invite to come forward. Let's start with our Teacher Mentor Program, Laura Maroose, KSD Teacher Mentor Specialist. She will speak briefly and introduce her teacher mentee. Laura.
Good evening. Whoa. I know. Sorry. That's okay. Good evening, President DeBruler, members of the board, Dr. Watts and Ms. Everett. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to be able to speak with you about my experiences with a mentor program. I suppose I should start from the beginning. I actually started it in the Kent School District in 1998, so nearly 20 years ago. And when I began teaching, I myself was part of the mentor program as a first-year teacher and had a mentor with the district. She was amazing. She supported me through observations and feedback and conversations focused on my successes and challenges and helped me to realize my vision in the classroom. Her expertise and ability to listen to me led to me being able to have an observation of another teacher that had a tremendous impact on my practice, changed how I taught my students, and started me on my journey to where I am today. My second experience with the mentor program was when I started mentoring with the in-building cadre of teachers. That experience actually took me first through classes through the University of Washington and through OSPI so that I could learn the skills and knowledge I needed to be a mentor for our first-year teachers. I also had the opportunity at that point to practice those skills with other teachers. It was during these 2 years on the mentor cadre when I recognized my passion for working with adult learners and having an impact on students in a different capacity, which leads me to now. This year, I was able to become a full-time release mentor and join my amazing team. Together, we support our first-year teachers by providing professional development with an instructional best practices course throughout the year. PLCs, we engage in learning-focused coaching conversations and support our mentees throughout the year. Together this year, we have had an impact on almost 100 teachers and over 8,300 students. Tonight, I would like to introduce Alfonso Sacido, one of my mentees, who teaches at Kent Elementary and a dual language program for second grade students. He is going to share some of his experiences.
All right.
Good evening, President DeBruler, Dr. Watts, members of the board. How are you guys doing today? Yeah, still awake? All right. I just want to share a couple of things with you. I first and foremost wants to thank the entire team. You guys are awesome and great. Your commitment and dedication doesn't go unnoticed. The countless evenings and even weekends at times that you spend with us do not go unnoticed. Okay, we appreciate it. I want to especially thank you, Laura. You always know just what to say. Most importantly, you know what questions to ask. Questions that make me think about my own teaching and my own practice. Questions that make me better. And for that, I thank you. I thank you for the huge impact that you had on my students. You truly understand that the main goal is for all students to reach their main potential. And that just helping me and all other first grade teachers is just a process. And so I just want to thank you.
And now from our Principal Mentor Program, I'd like to introduce Patty Drobny, KSD Principal Mentor from Daniel Elementary. She will speak briefly about her experience with the program and introduce her mentee. I Keep the mic right where it is, I think.
And you put it low.
I think it's just right. I don't know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nope. Good thing that, this is my good side because the camera won't show this. So, good evening, President DeBruler, members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Everett. I want to thank you for allowing us to be here. But first of all, I want to thank you for your support of both the Teacher Mentor Program and the Principal Mentor Program. My job is impacted by both of those on a daily basis. So I do, again, want to thank you on behalf of all the principals that are here today for that. I wanted to start with just saying something. I don't think this is very common knowledge, but I'm speaking from both the mentee role and the mentor role. I am the first mentee in the district. Kathy Lindowski, on her own accord years ago, went and got her certification before we had even had a program in Kent. And I was her protege, so thank you, Kathy. Shout out to Kathy. Thank you so much. And that was one of the reasons that inspired, well, first of all, one of the reasons I'm still here was her support, and one of the reasons that it inspired me to become a mentor myself. There are so many advantages to this. In addition just to getting to work with great people, we challenge ourselves professionally. Like Dr. Unsing said, we do have to go through a program ourselves. And then we find that we are a resource for each other, so we're constantly calling each other. We're constantly getting calls from other principals, not just our mentees. And that's also another way to challenge ourselves, to make sure we know what we're talking about. We tailor our support for the teachers, or for the principals rather, based on their need. So I have very experienced. I wish I could take some credit for Robert and Carriage Crest getting their award tonight, but that was not at all the case. So I am working myself with two very experienced teachers that are just new to Kent, that don't need a lot of mentoring, but need to learn more about Kent. And then with Ashley Short, who's going to be speaking in a little while, who was here as a new principal and who we did get to spend a lot of time the last couple of years together. So it's having this program allows us a safe place to have conversations. The teachers mentioned sometimes you want to cry. Sometimes I think we do want to cry, but sometimes that's because we're really excited about something that has happened, so there can be tears of joy too. The classes that we have and the meetings that we have, I find I walk out of these meetings that we have with the new leadership team finding that oh my gosh, I learned something myself, and that we all need to spread that word. So even the continued meetings have been very, very beneficial for both the mentors and the mentees. When you go into this program, I liken going into the principalship much like becoming a new parent. So you have all this time to get prepared. You think you know what you're going to do. You get those keys. You have the confidence that you needed to get the job, and then you walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? First suspension, first upset parent. You had a great answer in that interview, but then you're going to call and say, hey, can we talk about this? So that's very powerful to have a thought processor before you get on the phone and have another conversation. So with that too, we also have to help balance those personal needs, because the job is demanding. It's incredibly rewarding, but it's very demanding. And so it's nice to be able to remind someone, you know what, take care of yourself. Go home. It's 9 o'clock. Go home. Hang up and get some sleep. So balancing all those demands of the school, the parents, the staff, and especially the students, with remembering you have a family and you have a life too. Knowing how to check in with the legal responsibilities. So we really need to be cautious about that. And so if you don't know the answer, we'll call someone else. We'll help you find out, so that we're making sure that we're in compliance. And then finally, just taking time to laugh, because we got to find the joy, so it's okay to do that. It's been my pleasure the last 2 years to work with Ashley Short, and she has agreed to come up and talk, so I'd like to turn over the mic to her now.
A minor height difference here. Good evening. I've never heard that before. Good evening. President DeBruler, members of the board, Dr. Watts and Ms. Everett. It is an honor to be here with you this evening and share my experience. I think back to the summer of 2015 when Dr. Watts invited me to go on this journey in becoming part of Team KSD, and team it is. And as a new principal, the support and mentoring I have had not only through the mentoring program, but through all KSD leadership in our work together, and with my regular meetings with my school improvement officer, Allison Dino, and the new administrator cadre. The teamwork that I've experienced has supported my growth as a leader insurmountably. It's been wonderful. As I was thinking about these last 2 years, I was thinking about my work with Patty and what rich experience she has, and the perspective that rich experience brings. And so it reminded me that I think as a second-year principal, I'm in my car and I'm on I-5, and my perspective is that of a driver in the car on I-5, and Patty is in the helicopter overhead, and she's able to see things in a very different way. And so through being a thought partner, through reflecting with me and asking questions and just being that support, I'm able to occasionally have that perspective that she has in the helicopter while I'm driving the car. And that has been really powerful in my leadership. So I, again, just want to thank you so much for the opportunity and privilege to serve the most outstanding students and staff at Springbrook. Thank you.
And so if you are a principal mentee in the audience, would you also please stand so we can recognize you? I know there's a few of you out here. Yay. All right. And likewise, if you are a teacher mentee in the program, would you please stand so we can see who you are? Thank you one and all for being here this evening and supporting our program and our people. And that is all. Open for questions.
Do you have questions?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So if I read it right, I think I saw the number of at least the teachers that responded to the survey was 54-ish, but then I heard that 100 teachers are being menteed. Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
What's the kind of the number that we're doing?
We have 91 that are first years, and we have about 90 that are second years. So we have altogether a program of about 181.
Okay. And I imagine that the time is more intensive with the first years, and the second years is more ad hoc. So we have 5 mentor teachers?
Yeah, we have 6, but a total FTE of 5.4. So we have one person that's a 0.4.
Okay.
So it's our load is about if you're interested in the ratios, approximately 1 to 20, 1 to 22, something like that.
Yeah. Well, I was comparing it to the $380,000 as well.
Yeah.
And then do we know then, so if we have 92 second year, are those still the same teachers that were here last year, or did
87% of them carried over from first year to second.
Okay. And can we find out if they went to nearby districts, or did they just move away for different personal reasons?
Multiple reasons. We have some of that data unofficially because our mentors know.
Yeah. All right. I'd be curious maybe later to just get a little bit more detail.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thanks.
You bet. Thank you.
So I wanted to ask, so I know the BEST grant funds quite a bit of this, as well as other title money. So looking forward, how long is that grant in place? Or?
Yeah, our word at the March 22nd convening was that our BEST state funding is still in place. And so that is very good news. And we do fund 2.0 FTE out of entirely of the BEST grant. And then the other 3.4 FTE that we have part of the teacher mentor program is funded out of the Title IIA grant. And the Title IIA grant, you may also be aware, is going to be reduced, and so we are pulling that back. The number I have been using is the 10%. So I'm cutting, our program back by the 10% to meet those numbers. But the way that we're having to look at programming in order to keep this program, we're having to look at how can we think outside the box? How can we keep our program, keep our people, and still serve the needs that we have to do? So we're going to be looking at our, doing more of our 5.4 FTE, taking on first and second year, and probably pushing pause on the in-building mentor program that we developed, which is sad because those were all people, time, and dollars that were invested. University of Washington training for those in-building mentors, but to keep our program and to continue. And actually the team had a brainstorming session and actually came up with that. I feel really good about how our team worked together and worked through that, so that's actually their recommendation.
Because I think it's a real important, both programs are very important, and we want
they're huge.
Find ways to continue that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think last year we talked a little bit about after the second year, bridging something so that it wasn't like, hey, you've got a lot of support and now you're in third year. And so, and I know with budget cuts, that makes it even harder to do that. So.
It does. However, we did talk about how through, we want to make that transition to hand off to the building principal, and so looking at the work that we're doing with the new administrator cadre, then we want to include how can we, pull those people in and have them be a part of our building level team.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my question too about the budget, so thank you, I'm good.
Welcome.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about what the teacher mentees found with regard to learnings on equity-related matters. I was just thinking as you were speaking about the teacher grant that's being used for the equity training, and how can a program like this take part in those sort of initiatives, or maybe already is, I don't know. Are we working across divisions to take advantage of those opportunities?
Yeah, we brought in from the University of Washington a Professor Ed Taylor, and we brought him in. He did a workshop with us. We did the Harvard implicit bias assessment as part of one of our sessions that we did after work one day with a roundtable, and so. We are bringing that issue forward, and we're working those conversations into our conversations with our mentees. Another piece that I would also point out is that our Self-5D framework is also very strong in equitable practices, and so and we're putting that in front of our folks a lot.
I think you mentioned this, but when you get a certain amount of disagrees or did not meet my expectations, do we have comments to go along with that, or is this totally anonymous, or can we get down to the point where we can figure out what the needs are?
They are totally anonymous. I don't have names for any of the surveys that we do in professional development. However, we do look at those comments and we talk about, well, how can we improve? I think one of the things that we're taking away from this most recent survey, I'm thinking of the principal mentor survey, is a need for, I think, more differentiation. Just because a principal's coming in new doesn't mean they're a new principal. They might be new to Kent, and so their experience needs to look a little bit different.
Is that the same for teachers coming into this district if they're not new to teaching?
Well, to be accepted in the BEST grant, we have to have a new first-year teacher, so under 180 days. So we need to have the state gives us dollars according to the number of new teachers, new under 180-day teachers that qualify, and that's how we access those dollars. If we don't have the numbers, and of course, you're thinking what I'm thinking with the hiring freeze, those numbers are going to be harder to get after. But if we can the dollars are there for us to access, we just have to have the hires.
Okay. So I know that KEA, we've been partnering a little bit with some of the onboarding, or they've taken a little bit of a more assertive role in welcoming new teachers, helping them find housing and that kind of thing. So this seems like there's another opportunity here to just extend it even further. So I don't know if out of the thinking of the box. Thank you. That's been part of the discussion. A stronger partnership with KEA for mentoring, possibly funding.
Yeah. Our team has, they're all teachers, and they're all part of the KEA, and so we have those connections in place, and we will be doing more of that kind of thinking, definitely.
Thank you, Dr. Pam.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
Okay, this is a little bit interesting. Moving on to Board of Directors discussion and approval, we have the 2018 WASDA legislative position proposals, but there aren't any here. Agda, I don't know how to do this.
I know.
If we're supposed to make a motion first.
I was beginning to think, oh my gosh, I dropped the ball somewhere, because I didn't click on it earlier because I assumed they were there and that you would all see them, and I had already seen them. So I could tell you about them, and then we'll decide how we want to proceed, if that's...
Is that okay to do that without having a motion? I mean, we need a motion.
So we don't have.
So should we have a motion?
What are we motioning on?
Well, I could propose a motion if you would like. I would propose.
Okay, hang on. We'll just do a summary of presentation right now, I think.
Okay.
And then.
So as I mentioned at a previous meeting, there were 3 proposals that last year we had approved, along with a consortium of other school districts, and moved those forward to WASDA. And of those 3, one of them, it was the 3rd time that it was presented to WASDA, and so now it's on the sort of standing positions for WASDA. And so we don't need to sort of bring it forward as a collective to have it be approved by the WASDA membership. But 2 of those are not in that position, and we want to keep, the thinking was we'd want to keep bringing them forward to get the support to continue to have these addressed by the state legislature and governor. So those 2, one of them was legislative proposal 5.20, which is ample state funding for school nurses, social workers, counselors, and psychologists. So again, that there would be adequate funding provided by the state to fund the need for having those positions in our schools. That was one.
Nurses. Say them again, nurses.
School nurses, social workers, counselors, and psychologists. Or positions, like those in terms of the social worker, counselor, and psychologist. Because I know Maya had made the point last time, which was well taken, that there could be a different title, but following a similar role in a school. And then the second one that I'm asking you all to approve so that we can be approving these to send them forward with our other colleagues from other districts. That one is funding the Transitional Bilingual Instructional Program and Learning Assistance Program, the LAP program, based on student need. So there was sort of a funding model proposed for those programs that would be based more on the student need in the district versus the way that they're currently funding.
Is there a number on that one?
Yeah, that's legislative proposal 5.60. So we as a board had approved those last year and submitted, so I would, if it's appropriate now, I'd like to move that we approve those 2 proposals again that we had approved last year, and that the timeline for that is that they need to be submitted to WASDA by the beginning of June.
Okay, do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments?
Is one proposal more priority, or they go in the same equal
They
priority?
go in the same, yeah. The prioritization happens when you're at the legislative assembly, and that all of the members vote on all of the proposals that are presented, as well as previous, standing positions of
When is
WASDA.
that conference?
That is always in the fall.
Okay.
And there's numerous proposals. Quite a few come forward. There's some come forward from districts. That would probably be the smallest number. Then there's some that come from the legislative committee from WASDA. And then also in consideration are all of the standing proposals that can also be prioritized and voted on for the coming session. Yeah. I would really advocate for the lab funds based on the needs. That's been talked about for a long time, and I know we brought it forward last year. But I was wondering, if maybe next year, and I don't know if we are doing it this way, but it would be good to not just get board input, but I'm assuming we get staff input too before this happens. I don't know how that works.
Ideally, that's our process that we're revamping now, and as I shared with you, Dr. Harmon and I have refined the process for policy and procedural work. So I think we'll see a very different approach, and staff would have that through cabinet would have that's already a part of the process. So staff does have that.
Well, and speaking historically, too, I know that both as sometimes staff have given input to us related to what proposals we might submit and put forward, and sometimes those ideas have come from us, like the English language learners ones I had brought forward, and other times have come from other school board directors from other districts. And then the other part of the process, that Russ was speaking to is when the prioritization happens and the voting on that. And I know that that's been a time where I've solicited your input, and oftentimes the superintendent has given me input from staff on those items. One of the challenges I've experienced is that, and you probably have too, is because there's so many things being voted on, because it's all the standing positions plus these new ones, it's really a lot for any one person to kind of look over and prioritize. And so that's why I've tried to gear getting the input around broad topics and things, that are priorities, and looking at like blueprint, for example. I think in the future, that's going to be a little bit easier because the legislative committee at WASDA has been going through this process where they've been sort of streamlining and looking at all the standing proposals and combining some of those together, things that belong together more. And then the other committee that I'm on, the resolutions committee, which has sort of similar types of things, that's going to be the next step of the process to really look at those and how do those align with some of the legislative proposals. So I think WASDA as an organization is getting more effective and efficient about how to do this work of prioritizing what's important to us as school board directors that we want the legislature to be working on.
And I'd say I've seen over the last few years where more of the districts are starting to collaborate. Because in the past, when I've gone to we may have something that our board felt really passionate about, which was really good, but it didn't always make it onto the next level because of the fact that people didn't understand what it was. And so I know I've just done a great job of helping network with other districts so that I think a couple of these as well, we had other districts that have partnered in with us, which really speaks volumes when we go to Leg Assembly.
Yeah, and we do that networking there at the Legislative Assembly, so districts of ours like in South King County and, Yakima and some other ones in Central Washington that really have a high priority around equity and serving all of our students and meeting the needs of the diversity of our students more effectively, that we really have kind of prioritized and come together to really advocate and get more people to vote on prioritizing some of those proposals too. So. All right.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve proposals 5.20 and 5.60 for the WASDA Legislative Committee, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. Moving on to the iGrad lease renewals, we need a motion to approve the lease renewals with KHP Limited Partnership for the store located in Kent Hill Plaza at 25662 and 25672 and 25664 104th Avenue Southeast in Kent.
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
Do you have any questions?
I was just curious how it compares to the last lease. Are we comparable? I know we negotiated a fairly low contract when we first opened up iGrad. I'm just wondering if the numbers are staying low or whether we've seen a significant increase on the lease.
So
Mike,
this
thank you.
lease is fixed for the next 3 years in the cost. We did have a 3%.
Thank you.
And let's see, and then I had a question about, because we're still in partnership with Green River for this space, or I was wondering what that partnership looks like, and how the cost sharing is happening.
So Green River pulled out.
Okay, yeah.
So we have
Space
that
is still in.
cost, and Hurricane and Carol are working partner to.
Okay. Sounds interesting.
Oh, they're broke.
So it's still the two spaces that are together, and then it's the one that's on the end of the building still. And is that one being used, that end building? Okay. Okay, good. Russ, did you have a question?
Do we have an idea of how many full-time students are going there?
250 students attend, and depending on whether, because of the changing of the formula and how we claim kids, we've been able to claim up to about 140 to 170 kids.
FTE full. So 140, and we're getting about 10 grand per kid?
$638 per month per kid, per FTE.
On a 9-month?
10 months.
10-month. Well, that's pretty easy math, right? I don't know why I'm trying so hard. It's by 10. So 7 grand. Okay.
That's about average.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve the lease renewals with KHP Limited Partnership for those 3 spaces on 104th Avenue Southeast, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Actually, I have a question.
Oh, did you? Oh.
Can I ask for the previous one, or how does that?
About the iGrad?
Yeah. That's okay. I'll ask separately.
It's not going to make a difference on how you vote. Okay.
That's good.
All right. So moving on to the consent agenda. Do we have anybody who wants to pull anything from any item from the consent agenda? No? Okay. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I so move.
We have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? And then we are moving on to 7.0, the Board of Directors informational. We have the first reading of revised policy 3240 on student conduct expectations. Do we have any questions on that?
I had a comment on that.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, so I was really pleased to see that we added a component there about engaging students in learning if those sanctions were in place, like we've been talking about. So I was really glad to see that. One area I was wondering if we thought about considering there, because it seemed to me like it might fit there, was about social emotional supports that we're providing or behavioral things to help our students have the type of conduct that they should have in schools.
Randy, if you'd speak to several options we have.
No, we hadn't discussed this. We had an ad hoc group of staff, parents, students weighing in on this work around 3240 and 3241. I think you'll see in the procedures when they are on the agenda for the next one, the bulk of some of the work that we're trying to do around that. We pretty much adopted the language that's coming from WASDA around our policy revisions, and really dove into some of that other work in the procedures.
I guess I would just encourage us to have that in the policy too, because I know that's like a priority for me and my other colleagues on the board. And so I think having it as a policy statement would be strong and important too.
Okay, we'll bring that back and take a look at that.
Thanks.
And to be clear, you were speaking of social emotional learning opportunities,
Yes,
correct?
yeah, to help students be able to meet the conduct expectations that we have, which is why I saw the linkage there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments on 3240?
I have on both.
On
40
both?
and 41.
So do you want to go into 3241 and then go back? Sure. Okay. So we're looking at this first reading of revised policy 3241, classroom management, corrective actions and sanctions. Do we have questions on that or both?
I had a question, but did you want to go first, Maya?
Well, I have several questions. So, yes, I just wanted to be sure that we're mindful of the work that the Discipline Committee worked on 2013, and without seeing the procedures and seeing a lot of changes in the policy, I'm just wondering if, some of those verbiage, like the mitigating factors and those sort of things, are they all still going to be captured somewhere? And did we have those members, participate in this, revised policy? Because I feel like we do this continually, that we don't honor the work that's already been done. So that came up for me when I was reading this. And you don't have to have an answer right now. I just want to make sure there's a discussion over that. And then secondly, some of the things that I read, like we'll distribute the discipline policy and procedures to students and guardians and community on an annual basis. And I've taken a look at that annual report and useful information, and I always wonder, if they both sync up. Are we giving the same messages there? And that leads me to also think about can we bring up this particular policy on a more regular basis than annual? Because I really don't think people are going to pay attention to this, when it's embedded within this, I don't know how many page handbook they're getting at the start of the school year. So my thought about it was, I know we shouldn't talk about charter schools, but I always appreciated that they had expectations right up front. Here are what our teachers are expected. Here's what's expected of our students, expected of our families, and it's almost a contract that everybody signs. Can't we not have something like that clearly establishes expectations? So, part of discussion.
More to be discussed, but Andy will note that and opportunities for improvement.
Okay, anything else on that?
Did you have other questions or comments, Maya? Oh, on that one, I was just more curious myself. There were a lot of WACs, Washington Administrative Code, that were, removed from there, and a few of the RCWs. So I was curious, did all those WACs actually get removed from the state, or do we know why that was changed? I assume that's because that's what WASDA did. So we're doing it.
It is, and actually, if you kind of notice, they just did a summary, basically all the 400s. Instead of listing each of them separately, they just quoted the 400s all together.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you for that explanation. I missed that.
Because I thought the same thing when I was looking at it. And so, yeah.
So I just had one kind of question comment. So it calls out specifically the long-term expended and suspended and expelled students, getting them back as soon as possible. And I know short-terms is not, is a few days, but a few days still has a big impact. So I don't know do we need anything or something that talks about, I still am always worried about that support. And I know we automatically give the homework or different things to those students. I don't see it specifically spelled out. Do we need to spell out the short-term and support for students all students that aren't in class? So I don't know, just it's something to think about. That was the one thing that stood out to me is, okay, where's that, there's that gap in there of the kids that are they're not in the in-school suspension where I know they're getting the help, but they're in the short-term suspension, but they're not that long-term. So.
Thank you, Debbie.
And even a few days if they've missed,
it can
makes
make a big
difference. Big difference. Yeah. Okay, anything else on that? The next one is first reading of new policy 4217 on effective communication. Do we have any questions on that? Bless you.
Yeah, I was just wondering why it's titled effective. Why it wasn't titled accessibility to individuals with disabilities? Is it more broader, or I can't really, it seems like a really broad title for what it's addressing.
7.0.
I think the main reason for that is we utilize the WASDA as a template, and that was what they called it, and it's kind of a template for what other schools are doing, so we kept that consistency here. So.
Yeah, I just feel like effective communication, we have so much to work on with that, right, in our district, and this is addressing very specific participants, and it just seems strange.
Do you have it?
I'm suggesting that it call out what it is, because if you say effective communication, I don't think we have a policy on communication. Do we?
Well, can't quote the number,
but I think we need something.
We have protocols, certainly, for communication. We'll certainly look into if that is the most appropriate title and why. And
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Corbin. Question.
Anything else on that? Okay. All right. We are moving on to the communication from the audience. So we have, let's see if I came in, Christina Caravaglio. Just a reminder, the podium's over here. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please address issues rather than individuals. And so Christina's there, and then Sean Bean is on deck, so you'll be up next.
Ready? Good evening. Okay, go. My name is Christy Caravaglio, and I'm a parent and volunteer at Lake Youngs Elementary and Glen Ridge Elementary both. I'm also an arts commissioner for the city of Kent. I'm here to express my gratitude for the quick response to the Lake Youngs parents' concern about the music teacher position at our school. We were told that our music teacher would be involuntarily transferred and the position would be filled with a general education teacher. I am so relieved that the Kent School District's values of equity and excellence were upheld by keeping the endorsed professional in that position. Since this is a contract year, I've heard, I would really like all of us to make sure that it's written into the contract that music and PE positions must be staffed by endorsed professionals and that they're protected positions at the schools. To do otherwise would be to break the district's promise to its stakeholders to provide equity and excellence in education. As you probably know, the arts are a mandated core subject that is required to be taught in school. By nurturing creativity through arts education, students are developing important skills and attributes that are essential to their success in college, career, and in life. We expect our children to be taught by highly trained professionals in all the core subjects, not just some of them. Now I turn over the page. I just really would like all of, I don't know how to check back in, but I really am interested in accountability for getting this in the contract this year to protect the music and PE positions against the involuntary transfer policy, and to make sure that the music and PE positions are taught by endorsed specialists in music and PE. So, thank you.
Thank you. So Sean Bean up next, and then Hope Villarreal is on deck.
Okay, so first I would like to
say that we're doing.
Well, I will be presenting with Hope Villarreal. I'm Sean Bean. Okay, so what we're here to talk about today is about the budget cuts, and more specifically about the budget cuts about Moving Up Day.
So our class especially, we were really disappointed that when we heard that the Moving Up Day would be canceled, because we are in 6th grade, so that directly affects us and our school and many other schools. So,
not only was our class was disappointed, but some students are single childs, but not only will they not have like a sibling that went to middle school to tell them like what it's like, but they don't have anybody else in their family like that they could really rely on or something. But they could be nervous or scared because they don't really know what to expect. And like she said, they're disappointed, but they're also unprepared.
So we have the idea that we understand that due to the financial challenges, the district canceled the event. But we think that maybe the schools individually could raise money so that the 6th graders could go to Moving Up Day. Or another idea might be that if the schools are close enough to the middle schools, then they could even walk. And that would easily cut down some of the costs for buses, but it would also be very fun for the students to do.
Not only that, but I would like to say, like, there's, for example, I'm going to Matson, so Sting Night. Personally, I wasn't able to go to that because of school talent show. So
yeah, we were both in the talent show.
So not really everyone could go to like the middle school night of their middle school, but if moving Up Day was back up, then they would have a chance. It's also more convenient because it's during school hours.
So then everyone gets a chance to be able to go to whatever middle school they are going to. So thank you for taking the time to listen to our thoughts about Moving Up Day.
Please bring it back.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to Superintendent's report. Dr. Watts?
Thank you, President DeBruler, members of the board, Ms. Everett, and community members. Thank you for we'll just say a great meeting. And I want to just comment on two experiences that have really have been a great deal to me. On May 11th, I had the opportunity to be present for a collaborative between KEA, WEA, Kent School District, and University of Washington to support the continued professional development of our teachers, as well as those who support our teachers. We had members who were there from our teaching ranks, from our administrative ranks, from our school board, as well as our community. And the topic focused on not just creating culturally responsive practices, but creating culturally responsive communities in our classrooms. And that's not lost on me. This is a part of our continued focus on equity, and under the equity umbrella, opportunities such as restorative practices, culturally responsive communities or strategies, and ultimately restoring the relationships every day between our adults and our students. So I appreciated being there for at least half of that session, learned a great deal, and look forward to seeing evidence of that implementation continued in our classrooms. Today, I also had the opportunity to look, listen, and learn and present at AWSP's Equity Conference, and we had several of our team KSD members represented there as well. Our focus on equity is clear. Our implementation, while I shared in May of 2016 at that podium, that equity work, equity leadership specifically, is not easy, and we certainly understand that, and it is worth it. So we're going to continue to communicate effectively what it is that we are doing and still need to do to ensure that all means all in terms of allocating and distributing resources, and all means each for our students in Kent School District. Proud to serve and appreciated the learning today. Look forward to many more opportunities. That concludes my report.
Yes?
I'll just say one observation that I've really enjoyed in the spring in the district, and that's attending the track meets at French Field. And what I love about this district, and maybe specifically Mill Creek and some of the other middle schools in this area, is how the crowd and the kids cheer the last runner more than the first place runner. And I just absolutely love that about this district. And so it's track meets are pretty boring when you compare them to hockey because of the downtime. But when those races happen, it is a really uniting feeling in the crowd and among the kids on how we lift each other up. And it's a lot of fun. That's it.
Deb?
So I had the opportunity to go to the Kent Area Council Founders Day last week, which is always a great event where we get to recognize our volunteers that have in PTA received awards and to raise money for scholarships for our high school students. And so it was a different location this time, which made it a little bit unique. It was at Green River Community College this year, but it was a great event, and it was nice to be able to recognize and connect with our educators as well as parent volunteers at that event. I also, especially since we talked about mentoring today and our teacher mentoring program and our principal mentoring program, I would be remiss if I didn't say something again about mentoring and how much I appreciate the opportunity to be a mentor, and how I encourage everybody, if you haven't had the chance or take, it's, an hour of your week, and the opportunity that you have to connect with a student and make a difference in their life really is so, so important. So I will always put that plug in for mentoring. So that concludes my report.
Well, I wanted to follow up with all of you from our meeting last night when we had our board superintendent governance team meeting, and we talked about wanting to have a tool to evaluate the effectiveness of these meetings and our agendas. So I did connect with Colleen, and because she was at the equity conference, we weren't able to speak, but we're going to talk tomorrow so I can hear about the equity conference, as well as she wants to know a little bit more about what exactly we're looking for, and she thinks she has some ideas to help us. So either tonight or tomorrow, if you have any thoughts that you want to share with me for what you're looking for in that tool, let me know. And then I wanted to mention a week from Saturday, I'm really excited to be again volunteering in the food court at the Kent International Festival. I always look forward to that so much, to see so many of our students and community members. I remember seeing Tom Ogg there one year. And where the food court is right where the students are all performing. And so I'm really excited to do that and encourage others to attend. I wanted to give a brief legislative update, and I also emailed this to all of you. It was an update from WASDA, kind of letting us know what the sticking points are in terms of the state budget and what's being negotiated. And so there's sort of two key areas. One has to do with funding and primarily related to teacher pay. And so that's sort of one area that's still being negotiated with differences, of course, with the House and the Senate. And then the other area of disagreement, I guess, is around the assessment requirements for the graduating class of 2017, and where the House is to fully delink all of the assessments from the graduation requirements, and the Senate is only delinking the science and delaying that. So those are sort of two of the areas that are being negotiated right now that we can weigh in on and influence.
I'm sorry, so next year's graduation?
For the graduating class of 2017 and beyond. So that is interesting it says that.
17?
That's what it says.
2017?
Yeah.
That's this year.
So that would be this year, that wouldn't make
In the next
sense.
10
So
days.
that's what the WASDA thing said, but they must mean,
No,
or could someone clarify?
It is that, so there are two similar bills, one 5639 regarding just that,
Right.
just one aspect of it, and then 1014 regarding delinking the graduation rate. Now, we'd still use Smarter Balanced to meet our summative assessment criteria for our students. However, there is a movement afoot regarding assessment and testing, and the question really is what barriers are being placed, whether real or perceived, for our students being eligible to graduate and then to persist. And if those barriers are present, what could that mean for our students? So we've been taking a close look at those numbers and who would be impacted. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
And then lastly, I just wanted to share that I did file for re-election, and it will be interesting, and I'm excited. I have actually two candidates running against me, so I'm really seeing it as an opportunity to learn and listen more from community members as I'm campaigning, and then also to really listen and learn about why they're wanting to run and what their thoughts are about how to improve the district, so that no matter who the candidate is, that we would all have informed each other and be better in the role as a school board director. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Well, first, I just was reminded when Agda mentioned the assessment and discussion in the legislators, with the legislators, that I just wanted to thank Dr. Harmon and team for coming up with that great assessment of 5639, is it?
That's right.
I always change the numbers. But in any case, I just wanted to say that I really appreciated that what the legislators were looking for was to see if these assessments would affect graduations, but in fact, the information that came out of that was, looking at the barriers for graduation and how the 24 credit is impacting that. And so, when we talk about equity, that's such a big piece. We have to look at rigor and all of that, and not just think about what is an easy way to graduate, but are our kids really learning and are they preparing for their future? So I really appreciated the information that I looked at it very closely, and it was completely the opposite of what legislators wanted to see, but that's where we, that's so important that we look at what, from an equity lens, what that should read. So anyway, I forgot to mention that, but that was a great introduction. So I also wanted to thank, the sixth grade elementary honors band and orchestra. I had a chance to see. That was our inaugural honors band and orchestra for sixth grade. And our Kent Schools Foundation sponsored that. And it was just great to see not only the kids performing, but also the commitment of our staff who actually volunteered their time to be there despite the budget cuts or in spite of the budget cuts. They were there to really kick this off. So I really wanted to thank them and wanted to just thank our City of Kent and our community leaders to come and talk about the gang violence happening, how we can collaborate more effectively with our cities. And Dr. Watts had some feedback on how that could work. And so I look forward to a collaboration there. And finally, I just want to say thank you to my colleagues for a great discussion last night. With our board superintendent governance team. I just love it that we can be frank and be understanding and accepting of our mistakes and the things we do well as well. Okay.
Thank you. I have done a lot of things in the last couple of weeks, but I'm going to get a couple. Last week, I attended the Forum for Black Student Success, and our own Brad Brown was there, and he presented beautifully, and I was so proud of him, and so happy that you are part of us. This is really, you did just a super job. Also, one of the speakers there was Dr. Marcia Arunga. I think that's how you pronounce her name. She's written a book called The Lost Ones, and I heard her talk a couple years ago at the Juneteenth celebration, where she read her book, and she is such an animated speaker, and she had 3 of her books there, and I just asked her, I said, where can I buy your books? And she said, well, I have a couple of them here, and I said, I can buy them? Could I buy 2? And she said, sure. So I wrote her a check, and then she said, would you like me to sign them? So she said, who would you like them signed to? What's the word? Anyway, dedicated to, and so I told her that my 2 mentees, one who's in college and one who's in 4th grade, and so I gave my college mentee her book yesterday, and she was pretty pleased with it, and she's at the Umoja Black Scholars Program at Highline, and I said, you could take this and show the other students in your program, show them this book, because they really talk about African heritage, and it's a book called The Lost Ones. It's about how children and young people were taken from Africa, and families never knew what happened to them. And so a lot of the current Black people in our country now who came from the enslaved Africans have no idea where they came from. They just know they're from Africa, and so they don't have countries of origin or any culture that they had they brought with them. So she moved me a lot. I was at the Equity Conference again today. I didn't know Dr. Watts was speaking, nor did I know that there was a team there. But it was a wonderful conference, and the 2 keynote speakers were incredible. Just, again, one was on he's a Reverend doctor who's lived in Alaska for 20 years, and he has stories of Alaskans and how you look at culture through a certain lens, and the culture that you have is the culture that you believe is the only culture that's there. And if you realize that there are other cultures, other ways of looking at the world, that none of them is right or wrong, they're just different. And it was just, the way he explained it was just beautiful. And then Dr. Robin DiAngelo was there and talked about white privilege and institutionalized racism, and it was just excellent, just really excellent. So I've got a lot of things to think about. I took pictures of some of her screens, and I wrote down some things, and I just need to go back and look at that. So Kent Area Council PTSA made $5,335.50 at at the Founder's Day, and the dessert table brought in more money than the baskets, which is apparently usual. But they're very pleased with that amount, and they're looking forward to giving out scholarships. And the Communities and Schools of Kent had the goal of making $50,000, and they made just a little bit more than $50,000. So they also are very pleased and are looking forward to the services that can be provided. So that's about all I'm going to say tonight. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you for being here.